Hi there, Erica Bear.
Hello there, Tiffany Burns.
This is a school leader's playbook by connecting through conversation.
Excited to be back here with you again. What are we going to chat about today?
Well, today we are chatting about what to do when somebody gets mad in conversation. And that is awful.
I don't know what you mean. That's never happened to me.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to
Um,
lie. That happened to me yesterday. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, and it just feels so uncomfortable and it escalates so quickly. And I know people say, don't take it personally. And yet I am a person. And so it can just be so tricky and so tough. And we'd love to be able to help people out with that, what to do in those kind of situations.
Yeah, because this is something that every school leader is going to experience. People are going to be frustrated with you at times. They're going to be angry with you at times. Their emotions are gonna be more than we were expecting at times. It's just part of the gig, unfortunately. And so one of the things that we think about, because so often what folks are coming in with and saying they're upset about, first of all, we had no control over or no impact on. Like that's one piece to know is that the anger is often having little to do with you and something to do with something that happened at school, something that happened outside of school. We have no idea, but likely it wasn't you directly. But even if it was, what we have found is that what folks come in and say they're upset about or angry about isn't always the whole story. Usually it's like the tip of the iceberg or something that feels safe or easy to get upset about, but really there's a whole other layer underneath the water, so to speak.
Absolutely. Well, and we love that saying that, when people get mad, get curious.
Mhm.
And when you're talking about that whole other piece that's under the layer, that it goes a lot deeper, it's really important for us to remember that when we're talking with someone that's really upset, they might not even know that deeper thing that they're really upset about either. Like they might really think, here's what we're talking about, here's the issue at hand, and then it's not if they aren't even fully aware that actually no, they're really worried about this other thing.
Right. I think this especially happens with caregivers because there
Mhm.
is so much wrapped up in sending our babies off to schools to be taken care of by other people. Like that is handing over a whole lot of control. That is taking a whole lot of trust. That is really challenging. And when something goes wrong, like I'm a mom. I know you're a mom. But even if you aren't, I think every parent out there or anyone who knows a parent or has a child that they care about a lot, niece, nephew, we can all have the capacity to lose all rational thought when it comes to our own child. Every reasonable part of us might just fly right out the window when it comes to our own kid. Um, we're in Southern Oregon, and so we have in Ashland, I don't know, deer everywhere. It's our biggest traffic problem, our deer blocking the road. And they're so cute, and we love having them. And gosh, it'd be nice to go up and pet one. But those baby deer, when they're out in the wild or out walking up and down the street in Ashland, if a mama or dada deer comes up, they are going to get you. They become very, very dangerous. You do not want to come between a baby deer and their parent because they will get you and it will not be good. And that's their job. That is the job of a parent is to fiercely protect their child. And so sometimes we're on the receiving end of the complicated emotions that caregivers have around their kiddo and what it is to be sending them to this school.
Well, and it really doesn't matter how old or big the kid is, right?
Right.
Like you said babies at the beginning, and
Oh
I
man.
laugh because I'm over 5'8" and I am the shortest person in my house now. My babies are teenagers and they are a lot bigger than me, but I still have that protective energy, those protective feelings. And when I feel like my kids are threatened, and I don't just mean physically threatened, but when I start to worry about, well, what if this happens or this could be a lifelong consequence, right? I can start to act in a way that is not my regular, reasonable, rational self, because I'm really lit up and worried. And that, whoo, when that fear starts driving, you know,
Look out.
exactly, exactly.
So when this shows up in your office, when you've got someone in front of you who is not acting in a reasonable, rational way, we have to start asking ourselves, what would make a decent person respond in this way? What are some things that might be going on for someone to respond in this way that feels pretty over the top to us, right? And it takes this real curiosity. It takes kind of putting on this mindset of like, okay, there's more going on here. We're going to dig in a little bit. And I think it's important to ask some questions, like to really put on an open mindset. We're going to listen carefully and we're listening for that angst under the anger. We're really looking for the root cause of the issue. Um, and so I think some sentence stems can be really important in that sense to help you get to it. I don't know if you have any favorites.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm happy to put these in the show notes too because it's so helpful to have those sentence stems. And we have all of these in our book, A School Leader's Playbook for Tough Conversations, but we'll include them in the show notes too. Just some questions to really identify the real issue would be what would resolution to this situation look like for you? How can I support you? What does support look like in this situation? And here is my favorite. You asked if I had a favorite, and this is the one. What would be most helpful to move forward? I think sometimes when we're in these really tough conversations, it's easy to hang out in what I'm really upset about. And it's easy to kind of rehash, here's all the things that I'm really upset about, and here are the ways in which things are not going right. And what we want to do as leaders is help move that conversation forward and start focusing on, what does this look like moving forward instead of hanging out in this place that I can't go back in time. I can't go back and fix what has already happened. I can't make any changes there. But moving forward, I do have some control over that. And what can we do? What can we do in the future to help resolve this situation or alleviate some of the angst?
Right. And I mean, it's not just caregivers, right? I think
Mhm.
educators take their work very personally, right? And they take how they work very personally. And if something's come up where they're asked to do something different than what they've always done, and they feel passionately about what they've always done, or this kind of change makes them feel threatened in some kind of way, or makes their identity as a high quality educator feel threatened in some kind of way, we can have some of that same strong reaction that's just a little bit again more than what we might expect or more than is rational, I guess you might say. I was thinking about a time that we were working on a new curriculum. This was when I was at the high school level, and there were there was lots of discussion about how aligned the different English classes needed to be. We had a variety of English selectives, and there were some core things that had to happen. And we were finding that we needed to put some more structures in place to make sure that we were really hitting all of the essential standards in ninth and 10th grade. And I had one of the teachers come and talk to me, and it started as kind of a normal discussion, but as we were talking about some of the pieces that needed to be incorporated in the coming years, um, they started getting really escalated. They started getting really angry. They started responding in like a really like, I can't believe you're asking me to do this, and over the top kind of way. And I just kind of stood back and I was like, okay, like this is about more than aligning our English curriculum because that's a pretty reasonable thing to do, right? I wasn't asking folks to like all teach the same way or even the same thing. And they were really, really upset. And so I did start asking some questions about like, gosh, I'm wondering like this sounds like it's really challenging for you. What kind of supports might be useful? what are some of the things you see as barriers to making sure that we get to the end goal that I'm sure we both want around making sure every kiddo has the essential standards? And as I dug and dug and dug, it was really around um there was a this is a little bit silly to share now, but there was a conflict on the team between a couple of the teachers and a disagreement around how they were approaching one of the standards. I don't want to give away too many details. It sounds weird, but it was a conflict on the team, and she
Yeah.
didn't want to have to work through the conflict with the other people on her team. She wanted to just be able to do it her own way and kind of ignore the disagreement that was happening and pretend it wasn't there. And that's what it was. It wasn't about the stated issue of like curriculum alignment or anything else. It was about conflict on the team. And so sometimes just asking those questions, really leading with curiosity and then leaving space, like, because you have to listen carefully to find these things. And then you've got to pull on the thread, right? Once you kind of have an inkling. So it's investigative work.
Well, absolutely. Well, and as you were telling that story, I was thinking about all the times that we had done curriculum adoptions, that I supported that as well. And I feel like I've had very similar conversations, but the issue ended up being folks being nervous that we weren't going to have enough time to really implement it well, and thinking about, well, and then I'm just going to be expected to do this, and I don't understand this curriculum, and then I'm still held to these high standards of how I'm, making sure that my students are all meeting them. And so what we ended up talking about was how we can make that professional development be really supported, how we can make sure that the team has time to really dig in, to get familiar with the curriculum. And their worry was that we were going to do that in August and not save any time throughout the year to be able to do that. It was just going to be like, okay, you're getting all the professional development at the beginning, and that's all the training and support you're going to get. And um, once that became more clear that we would have more support going through and they were able to lean on other teachers and staff, that really helped resolve it. But if I would have just stuck at the surface, it would have just been, well, they don't want new curriculum. How am I going to deal? What do I do with that?
Right, right. Well, they were telling themselves a story, right? And we all
Exactly.
do that. We all tell ourselves stories without having all of the information. And so when we can get in there and gently provide additional information so that they can adjust the story to something matching what's actually going to happen. And we can't do that unless we know what the issue is, right? Like you didn't know that the issue was a concern around professional development. Once you're able to address that, then you can move forward. I think the other thing that can be tricky when someone starts to get escalated, they start to get angry. It's easy for us to forget that in that moment, they're also experiencing the impact of adrenaline. Like they're also experiencing like this big adrenaline spike. And when we're experiencing adrenaline, our brains don't work the same way. Like we're not processing as quickly. We're not able to take in new information in a way that is productive, and it makes the responsibility lie on us, the one who's not angry, to really take some time and recognize this is going to take some additional processing. Their brain isn't in the best spot, so we're going to have to do some extra scaffolding, ask some more questions, give them some time to de-escalate, use some of those de-escalation techniques to really bring them back to a place where they can take in new information. Like, of course, we're going to be providing some high quality implementation supports along the way.
Exactly. One, I think, what you're talking about with this idea of getting curious and what are we really listening for. I really like something to do.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in a situation like this, like, what's my action plan? What's my goal? What is my job in this conversation? And when my job is to listen and listen to identify a common purpose, that shifts a lot, right? Like, I stop listening to respond. I stop listening or, responding in a way that maybe is defensive. Like, it just gives me a different purpose. My goal is not to defend. My goal is to understand. And so if I'm just really focused on, okay, what are they really saying? And maybe they are saying what they're really upset about, but still I'm listening to that, I'm understanding, and I'm taking notes and listening for patterns and themes. Okay, this is what I think they're really getting at. Now I'm going to think of the next question to ask as opposed to the next thing I'm going to say to respond in what's maybe going to come off a little bit defensive or not in the most genuine way.
Well, we know that listening is one of the most impactful ways that we can de-escalate a heated
Mhm.
situation. Like when folks
Mhm.
feel listened to and they feel understood, especially if they're frustrated about something, that can just bring the temperature down in the room, right? And once we've said, oh my gosh, I hear that you're really worried about how we're going to provide enough time for professional development around this curriculum, or I can see that you're really worried about how Johnny is responding to these interventions and his rate of progress. Like, I see what you're upset about. I understand what you're upset about. Now we can start focusing on that common purpose of solving the problem, right? Now we can really dive into that. And they're like, okay, this person hears me. And even if I'm upset with what has happened previously, now we can start to work together to find a solution.
Well, the part that I think is so lucky, like we're so fortunate, and I mean this in not a, I mean this genuinely. In schools, we're so fortunate because it is so common that we have the same purpose. We don't always have the same solution in mind, but the purpose is I want the best for our students. You know, we both want our school to be successful. We both want this to be a positive program, or, you know, we all want everyone to feel safe and included. It's it's really easy, to be honest, to find what that common purpose is. Well, maybe I'll say it's simple. It's not easy. We keep talking about that. Um, but it is like there's a common purpose there. It's just waiting for us to kind of turn it over to put
Right?
some highlight it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, in schools, we all have a common mission. You walk into any school, you ask what their mission is, and there are going to be themes, right? We're going to have the same
Mhm.
thing. We want kids to achieve. We want everyone to feel a sense of belonging. We want everyone to grow and achieve whatever they want in life, right? That's what we want in schools. And when we're working with caregivers, of course, we want what's best for the child. Of course, we're both wanting to do whatever we can to help them be successful. It's about the method, right? And
Mhm.
so I, as you know, worked in special education for a long time. And so oftentimes, we always had the same purpose. I can't think of a time where me and a caregiver were not both very passionate about doing what was going to be best for the student that we were supporting. And there were many times when we disagreed about how to do that, right? And so oftentimes there were one common thing that I can think of, at least half a dozen times where I was working with families where they really felt that their child needed to have an aide with them all the time, to support their work in school. And through my experience and through research and through what I knew about the kids, I'm like, if they have a one-on-one adult with them all the time, for some kids, I'm not saying for all kids, but for a lot of kids, that's going to be really restrictive. That's actually going to be a far more restrictive placement than they need. And it's going to hinder their growth and hinder their ability to make the kind of progress that, again, we both want. And so I would often dig in with the family and say, okay, what is it about the aid that you think is going to support? Like, what are the goals that you have for that? And sometimes it was about student safety. Sometimes it was about student achievement and being able to access. And so once I could have a good sense of what is the thing they wanted, then we could start working together, because those are things I want too. I want the kid to be safe. I want the kid to be making good progress. I want them to have access to whatever the general education curriculum is. Then we can start problem solving around that. Then I can say, okay, they're really successful accessing in this environment and this environment. Let's provide some extra adult assistance in this environment and this environment, where they really need it. Or let's think about what that adult support looks like, and how can we make sure that that doesn't become a dependent situation. And so there were lots of ways to problem solve once I understood what their purpose was, because again, almost always we had the same purpose.
Well, and it's really separating out what's the purpose and what's the position, and
Right.
so being really clear about, okay, the purpose is we want the child to be successful, we want the child to achieve really well. And the parent was saying the way to do that, the way to solve that is by giving them an assistant, one-on-one. And you're saying, well, the way to solve that is to help them build independence so they can be successful. And it's really pointing that out, and saying, let's figure out how to solve this problem by really hanging out with the purpose of it instead of getting really stuck on that solution. So literally saying, you know what, this is what I'm hearing are common purposes, and let's think about how we can really try to accomplish that together. And if we do not very intentionally and explicitly name what we agree on, the other person is not going, that's not going to magically, arise. They're not going to go, gosh, we have so much in common. This is so great. We both want the exact same thing. If we don't point that out, that is not going to be the takeaway.
No, wouldn't that be lovely if that's what they were thinking? Well, and it's something for us to keep in mind too, because
Right.
leaders certainly can get positional, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
we can certainly be like, this is the solution, this is the answer, and be a little bit tunnel vision when it comes to that, right? So when we think about like everyone in the school wants our students to feel connected. And maybe I have this like, that must mean that we are going to, I don't know, implement this sort of advisory program or this sort of social emotional curriculum or whatever the thing is that I think. And someone else might have another idea. This is really what we need to do. And more than likely, it's like solution C or D, right? Like we can take all of those things, mush it together, and if we're open to different ways to get to that common interest, that common solution, then we're going to end up with a much better outcome on the other side.
Absolutely. Well, and I love what you said that we can all just get really positional. So that's just common, and
Yeah,
also as leaders, part of the reason that we are a leader is because we are so good at solving problems.
it's true. It's
You
true.
know, and we want to. So many of us are saying, I am a servant leader. I want to be supportive. I want to be helpful. I want to figure out solution. And we have to really remember that's a collaborative process and that's an open, it can be a very creative process as well. But that's when we're staying open, we're staying focused on what is that common interest. And now we can bat around a whole bunch of ideas of ways to get there, and we can throw out half of them.
Right, right. There's no such thing as I've never like there is a such thing as a bad idea, but not when we are trying to come up with the right solution for the context. So let's just put everything on the table, let's sort through it, and the good stuff will come forward. And I think in order to do that, one, we have to make sure that we don't come in like locked to our idea. It must happen this way. But also, I think in opening up everyone's minds, I think we want to just really focus on that idea of like, we are partners, we are collaborators, and some language to do that. We both really want Johnny to be successful. We both really want every student to feel connected at school. We both really want every student to have access to the 11th grade standards, right? Whatever the piece is, just saying that out loud can really level the playing field a little his mind. Um, Wondering is one of my favorite words, right? So I'm wondering if we might. I'm wondering if we
Mhm.
have, if we might consider. I'm wondering if there's a way we can, right? Like just it's open. It allows it invites new ideas. It invites
Mhm.
creative thinking,
Mhm.
and it doesn't put anyone in a defensive posture.
Mhm.
Similarly, could we explore, can we examine some other, I'm wondering if we can just dig in and think about some additional ideas, is another way to just get that moving forward.
Well, and with staff and colleagues, when I use frequently, I use it with students as well, is so let's do some rough draft thinking. And it just gives permission that this is a rough draft. I'm thinking out loud with you. I'll say that as well. And it just is not settled on this, but let's try this idea on. It might not be a good one. And I'm okay with that. You
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and
I
I
get
think the
that.
other thing I heard you saying was the we and us. And that partnership language does a couple things. It signals to the other person we're on the same team. We want the same thing. And so when I'm saying we, us, together, then I'm making sure that they're aware that we're on the same team. It's also a good reminder for me.
Right.
It's a really good reminder for me that we are on the same team. We're in this together. I like saying to people, thanks so much for partnering with me on this. That doesn't mean that we're agreeing with everything, but when I say thanks for partnering, that means that we're having this conversation and I'm viewing this as collaborative and we're partnering and problem solving together. And that just automatically makes it less positional. It makes it less me versus you. It's us.
Right. Right. I think, we started this conversation thinking about like, what do we do when someone walks in and they're really angry or they get really
Mhm.
escalated in the conversation? And that is not a fun place to hang out. So, I mean, so
Mhm.
what we do, of course, is we do everything we can to de-escalate and lots of tools for de-escalation that we can talk about down the road, but also like we're listening. That's
Mhm.
the key thing we can do to de-escalate. We're really making sure that we understand the problem. And then we have to think about like, okay, how are we going to move forward? How are we going to move to next? Because if we spend the whole time talking about what happened or what the problem is, and we stay in that problem soup without moving towards solution, it is maddening.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And we want to do what we can to move it forward. So we also have sentence stems from for that. We have all that being said,
Mhm.
nevertheless, and yet, or literally, and moving forward.
Right,
And folks that can't see me, that are just listening, you can't see my whole body
right,
moving from the left
right.
to the right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like just pushing
yeah.
that idea forward so we're not hanging out in places that I can't change.
Right. And I think too, and we said this one earlier, but when we've got someone who's come in, they're really escalated, and there maybe isn't a real clear like we can't undo whatever the thing is that happened, right? And so it's that for me, the one I use all the time, and you've already said it, but what does solution look like for you so that we can move forward? What are some things we can do so that we can move forward from here? How can we move forward so that we can make sure that we are doing everything we can to support Johnny or the class or whatever the situation might be? Um, because it's really easy to hang out there, and and folks do sometimes just need time to make complain and vent and get it all out, and then how are we going to move forward, because otherwise our jobs wouldn't be very fun sitting around talking about problems all day. Admiring problems is not my favorite thing.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that, again, that looking for common purpose, like trying to identify that, using that partnership language, that gives me something to do besides get defensive. You know?
Right, right. And we didn't say this, but I'm going to say it goes without saying that anytime, and we talked about this in the last episode, the most important thing we can do when someone is escalated is make sure we don't go there too, right? Make sure that we stay in control of our own emotions, that we are staying regulated, that we are putting out emotions we want other people to catch. We're not catching theirs, because that really is the only thing we can control in what feels like a very out of control situation.
Absolutely. And we're listening for that angst under the anger. Like, oh, okay, this is coming from a lot of worry or fear. And for me personally, that is when I hear that, when I say, okay, this person is coming from this place of being really nervous or really anxious about this situation, it's easier for me to empathize with that than it is if I'm just like, they are so mad at me. That's okay.
Yep, yep. Rationally or not, they're really not happy with me today. Yeah,
Right.
no, that's super hard.
Yeah.
All right. Well, fun to chat with you as always. Would you like to connect it for folks? What are some takeaways?
For me, it's just, when people get mad, get curious.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think the idea of identifying that common purpose, making sure that we remember that we're all on the same team and that there are many ways to solve problems. So don't get too positional and help others also stay open to new possibilities.
Good talk, Erica Bear.
Good talk, Tiffany Burns.